The traveler and Paimon continue their search for answers in Sumeru by seeking an audience with the Dendro Archon. After passing through the tunnel from Cinnabar Cliff in the Chasm and emerging in the lush rainforest of Sumeru, they ask passing scholar Hypatia for directions, only to find themselves completely ignored. Reasoning that she would likely lead them to a human settlement, they decide to follow her. Instead, she enters a cave and lights some incense, the scent of which causes the traveler to faint. She has a vision of a massive glowing white tree under a red sky, and upon approaching it, she hears a feminine voice say, "World, forget me." The vision ends as the traveler awakens in Gandharvaville, where she was taken by forest rangers Tighnari and Kale to receive treatment. After hearing Tighnari's explanation about her hallucination, the traveler suspects that he was not being truthful and decides to ask Kale for information. The next day, Tighnari allows the traveler and Paimon to accompany Kale on her patrol route, while he and the two other forest rangers handle a larger, more dangerous one. The two learn that there have been two Dendro Archons, Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, who died during the Cataclysm, and Lesser Lord Kusanali, the current Archon. Lesser Lord Kusanali was discovered after Greater Lord Rukkhadevata's death and brought back to Sumeru City, where she now lives in the sanctuary of Suristhana. Kale knows nothing else, attributing her lack of knowledge of the Archon to the amount of time she spent away from Sumeru, a story which is actually detailed in the Genshin Impact manga. She reveals that she knew who they were the moment she saw them, as she is a dear friend of Amber and lived in Mondstadt for a time. They regularly write to each other, and Amber related how the traveler and Paimon got involved with the Storm Terror incident. While treating the two to some food and drinks, Kale defends Tighnari's character after Paimon criticizes the way he speaks to her. In a moment of silliness, Paimon touches Kale, causing the girl to panic. She attempts to downplay her outburst, but immediately flees back to Gandharvaville and retires to bed, leaving the other two baffled. The next morning, the two find Kale bedridden. She was born with Eleazar, a disease endemic to Sumeru, which consigns the afflicted to a slow and agonizing death. Her symptoms were once successfully suppressed by Totore, one of the 11 Fatui Harbingers, but the agonizing experiments she was subjected to traumatized her and made her touch-averse. They volunteer to gather ingredients for Kale's medication with Tighnari, but take a detour after learning that a withering zone is formed in a forest ranger patrol route. Only those with elemental abilities can withstand a withering zone's effects, leaving Tighnari and the traveler as the only ones capable of immediately handling it. Once the area returns to normal, Tighnari voices concern over the rapidity of withering zone appearances. Not only do they damage the ecosystem, but they also cause Eleazar's symptoms to worsen. The withering, he explains, stems from a disease affecting Irminsul, a giant tree in the depths of the world, which has ley lines for roots. Irminsul absorbs the memories accumulated within the ley lines, and the Dendro Archon is known as the God of Wisdom due to her consciousness's direct connection to Irminsul. However, not even the Aranara, Greater Lord Rukkhadevata's familiars, who informed Tighnari's ancestors of all of this, know how to cure Irminsul, and thus, the withering has continued to affect Sumeru for thousands of years. After returning to the village, a duskbird from Hypatia delivers a desperate plea for food and water. Now convinced that the traveler can be entrusted with Sumeru's fate, Tighnari reveals the truth behind her vision. The incense caused the traveler's consciousness to connect to Irminsul, and what she witnessed was a real memory contained within it. Given that connecting to Irminsul is the purpose of Hypatia's training, Tighnari believes she may have more insight into the vision and sends them to deliver her emergency rations. Upon entering Hypatia's cave, the traveler unwittingly stumbles on an Aranara, which induces a dream in her as a distraction. The dream highlights her doubts about her journey's purpose and her relationship with her twin brother, voiced through an undefeatable Abyss Herald. After the traveler awakens from the dream, she and Paimon discover that the Aranara was taking care of Hypatia while she was unconscious. The traveler also finds that she dropped the box lunch in her dream-induced state. So she uses the fruit the Aranara had left behind to raise Hypatia's blood sugar before cooking radish veggie soup and sweet madame for the three of them. Hypatia explains how difficult it normally is to connect one's consciousness to Irminsul, and how many Sumeru academia researchers have lost their mind after touching divine knowledge in Irminsul. It took her 3 whole years to connect to Irminsul, and was lauded as a genius. And it was also the day she was able to see the Aranara, such as the neighbor who helped her. However, she has no answers regarding the vision, believing she may understand more once she reaches the next step of her training. While discussing the Aranara, she observes a contradiction between their power over dreams compared to the Sumeru's people's inability to dream as adults, which sages claim is Greater Lord Rukkhadevata's way of protecting her people from the irrationality and disorderliness of dreams. The traveler and Paimon return to Gandharvaville and find Sage Kaja and his subordinates personally trying to recruit Tighnari into a top-secret academia project. However, even the threat of disappointing his teacher, Sage Nafis, fails to sway Tighnari. The academia's emissaries leave empty-handed. To aid the traveler's search for a way to meet Lesser Lord Kusanali, Tighnari tells them to meet Rahawi, an acquaintance of his in Sumeru City. At the entrance to Sumeru City, a new policy grants the traveler and Paimon each an Akasha terminal, a device used to access Sumeru's knowledge-granting Akasha system. However, asking the Akasha directly or indirectly doesn't really work. Nor Rahawi, Catherine, or the Core of 30 advisor Asfond are able to tell them how to meet with the Archon. The Academia holds Lesser Lord Kusanali in less esteem compared to Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, so the new Archon's lack of presence has gone unquestioned by the people of Sumeru. The two are approached by a follower of Lesser Lord Kusanali named Dunyarzad. Although Dia, Dunyarzad's bodyguard, interrupts them to bring the runaway Dunyarzad back home, she changes her mind after seeing the girl's resolve to do something meaningful for her Archon. To repay the Archon for supporting her during a childhood bout of illness, Dunyarzad hopes to revive the Sub-Zero's festival, an obscure celebration of Lesser Lord Kusanali's birthday. She takes the group to meet Nilu, another follower of Lesser Lord Kusanali's, who will perform the Dance of Sub-Zeros, the centerpiece of the event. After telling the group about its history as a dance performed by the Goddess of Flowers, Nilu expresses her wish for real Patisaras, a vibrant purple flower that went extinct after the Goddess of Flowers died thousands of years ago. Greater Lord Rukkhadevata caused her own version of Patisaras to grow in the goddess's memory, but was unable to get the same shade of purple. While looking around the bazaar, the traveler and Paimon briefly converse with Catherine, who is taking a break from her Adventurers Guild post. The two have little time to discuss her usually informal speech before Dia approaches with a possible lead on meeting Lesser Lord Kusanali. They learn from Asfond that an academia convoy at Aru village was robbed, much to Grand Sage Azar's alarm. While most information on the missing inventory is classified, the item has to do with the Akasha, knowledge, and even the gods, and is currently somewhere in Port Ormos. At Port Ormos, the traveler and Paimon learn that some extremist Aramite groups, including one known as Ain al-Ahmar, are spreading rumors that the long-deceased King Deshret, a god whom they believed Greater Lord Rukkhadevata betrayed to gain control of Sumeru, will soon revive. They witness a dispute between members of Ain al-Ahmar and a man from the academia named Al-Haytham, which ends with the two parties agreeing to a fight in a few days. Realizing that Al-Haytham has details about the academia's missing item, the traveler convinces him to collaborate with them. He tells them that the missing item is a knowledge capsule used to obtain knowledge beyond the Akasha's limitations, but refuses to give them further information before they complete a task for him: to become customers of Dori, a shrewd merchant who refuses to do business with anyone affiliated with the academia due to the nature of her wares. Given a hefty sum and instructed not to haggle, the two gain her trust and return to Al-Haytham. After reconvening, Al-Haytham and the traveler tell each other why they are investigating the academia's missing item, a divine knowledge capsule, which Al-Haytham intends on studying to find out what divine knowledge entails. With Dori's help, they discover that Ain al-Ahmar's leader, Misri, has obtained it and plans on forcing the Eremites to give them access to the capsule during their scheduled fight. While the fight initially goes as planned, Misri goes berserk after using the divine knowledge capsule and attacks some of his group. Al-Haytham ends the fight by severing Misri's connection to his Akasha terminal, and the Matra take Misri into custody. As he is being led away, Misri mutters, "World, forget me." As the trio discusses the events that transpired, Al-Haytham and the traveler both withhold knowledge from one another. Al-Haytham that he swiped the divine knowledge capsule from Misri, the traveler that she heard Misri's words in a vision. Al-Haytham compares Misri's state to that of researchers who have gone insane after connecting to Irminsul, concluding that the capsule grants neither divine knowledge nor power. After finding that Al-Haytham too knows nothing about Lesser Lord Kusanali, the two parties go their separate way, with the traveler and Paimon returning to Sumeru City for the Sub-Zero's festival. Once they leave, Al-Haytham debates whether to deal with the divine knowledge capsule or produce a certain report for the sages. The traveler and Paimon return to the Grand Bazaar and recount their escapades in Port Ormos to Dunyarzad. Seeing that Paimon is tired, Dunyarzad provides the traveling pair with accommodations for the night. The next morning, the two meet up with Dunyarzad, who explains the festival traditions as they browse the event venues. After departing from Vihar's venue, where the traveler has to pick a mystery box of Yelda candy flavors, the three run into Eremite mercenaries planning on taking Dunyarzad hostage for a ransom. Tihia reveals herself and stalls the mercenaries alone so the three can escape. Dia catches up with them after driving the mercenaries off, but was wounded in the process as she was not yet acclimated to her new greatsword. She sold her old one to donate towards the Sub-Zero's festival. Dunyarzad's health begins to falter again, so the traveler brings her somewhere safe while Dia patrols the area. As they rest, Dunyarzad reveals that she was born with Eleazar and that it has progressed to a terminal stage. So she is doing everything she can for the Sub-Zero's festival so she will not leave behind any regrets once she passes away. Realizing it is almost time for the Dance of Sub-Zeros, the three hurry to the Grand Bazaar. They arrive to find Nilou being accosted by Grand Sage Azar and his secretary Sataria. Azar claims that the festival violates several laws and prematurely shuts the festival down, declaring that all public art performances will be banned starting with the next Nangarba Day, and departing with some enigmatic words about celebrating the birth of that god to your heart's content. Although Nilou tries to brainstorm a way to continue with the dance, Dunyarzad decides that they should comply with the Grand Sage's orders. The traveler and Paimon lament that Dunyarzad's situation means she will live out the rest of her life with the regret of being unable to see Nilou's performance. Elsewhere, a beeping sound is heard, as Kage states that the project has entered its most critical phase. The morning of the Sabzeruz festival repeats itself, causing the traveler to feel increasing amounts of deja vu. After picking the mystery box at Vihar's stall, the traveler takes her leave and heads to Lambat's tavern, believing she might shake off the sensation by eating something she'd never tried before. Much to the traveler's surprise, the flavor is familiar despite the incongruence with her memories, meaning she must have tried doing this before. As she leaves, she finds Dunyarzad sitting at the bench, having escaped her pursuers alone. Although the two sense that Dunyarzad is less energetic than usual, she attributes it to her constitution and heads to the Grand Bazaar, where Azar and Sitaria once again confront Nilu. Having failed to make any discoveries, the two go to sleep and hear the same beep again. Meanwhile, the project continues, despite seeing a drop in Yana energy output levels. As the festival loops again, the traveler has memorized each mystery box's flavor. She abandons Dunyarzad and the festival to chase after a strange girl and winds up at Mermerston, where another Dunyarzad lies on a bed. The mysterious girl, Nahida, restores the traveler and Paimon's memories of continuously reliving the events of the Sabzeruz festival, a phenomenon which she calls a samsara cycle, and tells them that their dendro powers and special constitutions make them the only ones who can perceive her. The Dunyarzad lying before them is the real one, continuously weakening with each samsara. So Nahida wants them to discover the samsara's cause and break the cycle while she delays Dunyarzad's illness. Nahida cannot tell them the answers without literally blowing their minds, so they have no choice but to find out for themselves. After failing to find any useful information, they decide to enlist Dia's help and brings her to Bermarston. While Dia cannot see or hear either Nahida or the real Dunyarzad, she senses Dunyarzad's aura and is convinced that they are telling the truth. Through Nahida's and the traveler's explanation, Dia correctly deduces that the Sumeru's Academia's sages are using the Akasha to cause the samsara, and suspects that they can use the Akasha to extract knowledge from its users and figuratively create a single massive brain that can solve problems that not even the best minds could crack alone. The three take their terminals off to cut themselves off from the samsara, but hear the beeping sound again and fall unconscious. Meanwhile, Kage warns that the project is taking longer than expected and that there will likely be casualties. Azar decides to continue. The next day begins, confirming that removing their Akasha terminals is useless. The traveler and Paimon seek Dia again and find that after she drives off the mercenaries, noticing that she was not injured fighting the kidnappers. While Dia forgot the events of the previous samsara, making the two hopeful that they may have broken free from the samsara. However, Nahida gives a lackluster response and tells them to wait for the next day. After the beep, Azar orders the project to continue, believing that these sacrifices are trivial compared to their end goal. The following day, the traveler suggests that samsara is caused by memory erasure, but is told it is wrong. Nahida's point is reinforced when they bring up the possibility to Dia, who shows them a training dummy that would be impossible for the sages to reproduce for each loop. Concluding that they are not in the real world, the traveler and Paimon realize that they have never tried leaving the city. However, it turns out that they tried twice. Somehow, their memories of leaving could not be recovered even with Nahida's intervention. They decide to test it again the next day, certain that it is the key to uncovering the samsara's true nature. In the morning, the traveler discovers that 2 days have passed since they started their plan. On the first day, the traveler left the city alone so Paimon could witness what happened, but immediately disappeared after leaving the city and failed to return, while the traveler's own memories of it were erased. On the second day, Nihida modified the Akasha terminal so the traveler could record messages about what they saw in the outside world. In the present, the recorded messages revealed that the Akasha compiles wisdom by stealing its users' dreams, which occurred during a stage of sleep when brain activity is high. The sage's rhetoric about dreams being detrimental to people is a lie used to cover up this fact. The samsara is the result of putting Akasha users' consciousnesses into a collective dream of the Sub-Zeru's festival, making them repeatedly wake up to a new day while the Akasha harvests their now vacant dreams. They also deduced that Nihida is actually Lesser Lord Kusanali, the Dendro Archon they have been looking for. As they contemplate the sage's end goals, the beep rings, and they await the next day. The next day, the traveler and Paimon wake up to find that the real Dunyarzad's consciousness could no longer handle the dream harvesting and disappeared. The other Dunyarzad is a puppet made to keep the samsara going. Nihida leaves the city to find a way to save Dunyarzad, while the two need to break the samsara by making the samsara's host realize they are dreaming. Their first suspected host turns out to be incorrect, much to the traveler's frustration. While searching for a clue, Paimon finds a compilation of folk legends that Dunyarzad wrote for them. Moved by the gesture, the traveler finds and thanks the puppet Dunyarzad. She repeats a line once spoken by the real Dunyarzad, which reminds the traveler of the one thing she regretted, the dance of Sub-Zerus. The traveler intervenes as Azar and Sataria confront Nilou, causing them to stop responding as they are puppets with no actual consciousness behind them. Noticing the presence of true purple Patisaras, the traveler confirms her theory that Nilou is the dream's host by having her make Azar and Sataria disappear. Making a connection to the tale of the first sage, Nilou realizes she is dreaming and begins to wake up. Nilou performs the Dance of Sub-Zerus as the dreamscape dissolves, during which Dunyarzad's spirit emerges from the crowd. After waking up, the traveler and Paimon realize that they are finally free. They remove their Akasha terminals and search for Dunyarzad, finding her safe and sound in Bimarston, along with Catherine. Catherine is in fact Nihida, who is possessing the Snezhnayan puppet through her Akasha terminal. She was trapped in the sanctuary of Suristhana 500 years ago and has not been able to leave since. After explaining how she saved Dunyarzad, Nihida answers some of the traveler's question as her reward for breaking the samsara. In the process, she reveals that the words, "World, forget me," were left behind by Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, whose consciousness was contaminated by something dangerous. The fact that the traveler could encounter it without going mad like other scholars gives her hope that she could finally resolve Irminsul's sickness. As for the sages, they remove their Akasha terminals to prevent information leakage, but she intends to investigate the matter and punish them if need be. For the time being, however, she needs to rest after expending a great deal of mental energy to preserve Dunyarzad's consciousness. Nihida leaves Catherine's body, and Catherine awakens away from her post, confused about what happened. Paimon suggests she was sleepwalking, causing Catherine to remark that she should visit her maintenance personnel before leaving. Sometime after the end of the Sub-Zerus festival Samsara, Nihida takes over Catherine's body again to speak to the traveler and Paimon when they visit the Adventurers Guild. Nahida wants to resolve the matter with the Sumeru's Academia sages before focusing her attention on Irminsul and the Withering. Because the sages have taken careful measures to avoid information leaks from the Akasha, her usual source of information, Nahida proposes that they convince Setaria, Grand Sage Azar's secretary, to reveal their plans. Setaria's genius gave her an exceptional opportunity for a desert dweller, but this has left her plagued by guilt over the sage's questionable work and her inability to use her studies to help the desert people. If they can make Setaria confront her guilt about her homeland, they will have a mole on the inside. In the guise of Catherine, Nahida talks to some of Setaria's acquaintances so that the traveler can imitate them during their conversations with Setaria the next day. The following day, as Setaria goes shopping, the target's consciousnesses are overridden by the travelers, who pretend that each of them has become King Deshret's follower. Over the course of the confrontation, Setaria reveals that King Deshret's resurrection was an Academia misinformation campaign. A bewildered Setaria flags down Core of 30 member Rima to warn her that something strange is afoot, but Rima's consciousness is taken over by the traveler, who continues confronting Setaria. Finally, Setaria cracks and agrees to covertly work against the sages, but even she knows little about the project's full scope. She decides to steal confidential documents and pass them to the traveler at the Academia's entrance the next night. As they approach the meeting point, the traveler Nahida's suspicions about the dearth of people prove well-founded when they find a mob of people shouting at the Academia entrance, all cheering and whooping. Il Dottore, the doctor, number 2 of the 11 Fatui Harbingers, reveals himself as the mastermind behind this scene. Setaria's conversation with the traveler was overheard through a listening device, and she was imprisoned, while Dottore experimented on people's Akasha terminals, planting into their minds the idea that the traveler had just saved the world and inducing the crowd to start mobbing them. Nahida, in Catherine's body, steps in front of the traveler and tells her to run while she handles the situation. In doing so, however, she reveals the scope of her abilities to Dottore. Now that they have learned about the Academia's collaboration with the Fatui, the traveler and Paimon decide to seek out Tighnari to learn more about the Sage's project. On the way to Gandharvaville, the traveler and Paimon repel an ambush by elite Eremite groups hired by Dottore. They find Kale in the village, whose Eleazar has worsened and prohibited her from going on expeditions. Tighnari himself uncharacteristically went to Party's die on a short notice, so the two headed there next. There they find Catherine. Nahida managed to escape Dottore's grasp at the last second, but she suspects that he will find a way to trap her consciousness with the Akasha. While searching for Tighnari, they encounter Hypatia, who believes that she has reached Purana life, and offers to show them what she saw. Instead of Greater Lord Rukkhadevata's consciousness, however, they witness Fatui Harbinger Scaramouche's memories. Before they can dwell on this further, more Eremites attack them. In the ensuing melee, Catherine is run through by a spear. She touches fingers with the traveler, and the two's consciousnesses trade bodies. From within Nahida's true body at the sanctuary of Sarasthana, the traveler witnesses Scaramouche in the process of becoming a god, and Scaramouche witnesses them in return. By the time she returns to her own body, the traveler finds herself fleeing Partystyi with Tighnari, who has come to her rescue. While indwelling the traveler, Nahida left her one final clue before her consciousness was trapped by Dottore. Even in a moonless night, a shower of starlight can still drown out illusions and lies. After determining that this meant seeking help from the people of the Great Red Sand, the traveler and Paimon part ways with Tighnari, who decides to stay behind in Perdi's Dai and continue monitoring Hypatia's condition. At Caravan Rebat, the traveler and Paimon narrowly escaped the Eremites trailing them, thanks to Alhaitham's help. Alhaitham tells them that he's still studying the capsule and believes the traveler might be hiding something from them before offering to go to Aru village with them, which they accept. When they arrive at the village, the traveler senses someone waiting to attack and parries the first strike before they clash with Alhaitham to a standstill. Alhaitham recognizes the man as Sino, the General Mahamatra. Sino demands he reveal the divine knowledge capsule before Alhaitham questions him being alone in the desert, as the other Matra were wondering where he went. Suddenly Dio arrives and tries to mediate, although the two men are still insistent on fighting. A sandstorm then kicks up, forcing the group into the village chief's hut when another woman calls out to them. Inside, the woman introduces herself as Candace and warns them not to cause a fight in the village again before asking them to explain what happened. Sino goes first, stating that he put himself in exile after noticing missing data that Azar submitted. When he tried to investigate, Azar denied his request, stating that he had no right to judge them. Sino then reveals that Alhaitham had been tasked with tracking the traveler, who doesn't deny the accusation, but reveals that he did not accept it, as the sages had promised him divine knowledge, which he found extremely suspicious. Dia then explains that she was just bored and wanted to return to the village, just as they hear growling outside. Candace leaves the house to handle the monsters. After some time passes, the traveler and Dio worry about her condition, so they head out and find her fighting some rift wolves and join in, repelling the enemy attack. The village chief, Uncle Anpu, then arrives, explaining that the village keepers have gone missing recently with no trace. Sino explains that they're actually the exiled scholars of the academia, as they believe that their crazed ramblings would give a negative psyche to others. Sino then asks the traveler to meet him elsewhere for a conversation. At the arranged spot, Sino explains the history of the village keepers. They were initially shunned by the village due to not being useful, but when an earthquake struck one day, a mad scholar crouched to the ground with a green light radiating from him, protecting the entire village from any damage. The traveler believes this to be the Dendro Archon's work, which Sino believes and is surprised to learn that the Archon walks among the people. Just then, a boy named Isak appears and asks them to help him find his grandpa. Returning to the chief's house, Sino confirms with Candace about Isak, who explains his past to them. Isak is delighted to learn that they'll be searching for his grandpa, so they begin to look for leads. The traveler and Sino begin their investigation on the missing village keepers by talking to some of the locals. After talking to them, Sino overhears two others talking about King Deshret's resurrection and confronts them. The two people, Sharkan and Makan, are terrified of Sino's presence and quickly spill everything they know, including their hatred for the Dendro Archon and that a radical was responsible for the missing cases. Sino warns them to not warn the radicals before Isak brings them to his grandpa's house, where the traveler nearly faints from the aftermath of some incense. Sino then catches a whiff of the incense after concentrating and, upon hearing Paimon mention Tighnari, tells them that he's a friend of his. After some further investigation around the hut, he discovers that someone else had come in and lured Isak's grandpa away with the incense. Returning to the village chief's house, Dia suggests visiting her drinking friends at Caravan Rebat, but stops Sino from coming along as she's worried he might intimidate them. Sino and Candace remain behind while the traveler accompanies Dia. As the two travel back to Caravan Rebat, Dia expresses her hatred for the Wall of Samuel, explaining that its purpose of protecting the rainforest from sandstorms has been co-opted by the sages to also keep the Eremites out of Sumeru, as the sages simply take advantage of them, regarding the desert folk as little more than tools or livestock to be exploited and discarded, undeserving of the Akasha's wisdom. At the local tavern, Dia meets with Zaki and tells him to let Delavar know that she has a spice deal for him. When Zaki takes them to the arranged spot, it is revealed to be an ambush, with both Delavar and Anger also appearing. Believing Dia to be an incompetent fighter, they are quickly surprised when she and the traveler defeat them with ease before taking them back to Aru village. The following night, Candace interrogates the radicals for information, and they reveal that the Eremite band had met with a masked man claiming to be King Deshret's envoy, who gave them incense to lure the village keepers out. They would then meet at a junction where the man would take them away to an unknown location. Uncle Ampu then chimes in, but to ensure the radicals wouldn't learn anything, Sino knocks them out. Uncle Ampu states that he believes the mystery man might be related to the academia, as they approached him before to take the village keepers back, which he refused. The group prepares to set out for the desert to find more information, while Candace stays behind to handle the radicals. Before the group leaves, Paimon spots Alhaitham, believing he has done nothing useful. Alhaitham tells them he had stayed in the village to continue his investigation and reveals that one of the villagers they spoke to had not been completely truthful to them. He explains that if the person had become too friendly to the village keepers, they could make themselves a target for the radicals. The group quickly realizes that Shani had lied and returns to her home to demand an explanation. Shani explains that she could hear screaming in the night, which Alhaitham confirmed with one of the village guards. After asking what was around the village, Shani tells them that there was an abandoned Eleazar hospital nearby, and they go there to investigate. Arriving at Dar al-Shifa, the traveler eliminates the monsters camping outside. After Alhaitham unlocks the entrance, they wait for nightfall, upon which they hear the crying that Shani had heard. Alhaitham discovers a hidden entrance, and after unlocking a few more mechanisms, they enter the hospital and discover a person inside, whom Alhaitham recognizes as Razak. Alhaitham realizes that they might be too late, since there were traces that indicated a hasty withdrawal. He explains that the Academia's misinformation campaign made the radicals spring into action to unknowingly help in their plans while ensuring that no liability could be traced to them, reminding them of their encounter with Misri at Port Ormos as an example. They take Razak back to the village, where they brief the others on what they found at the hospital. Sino wonders how the Academia is aware of their plans before Alhaitham tells them that he's the mole, much to his anger. He explains that the sages knew of his conviction and that it posed a threat to them, so they needed to monitor him at all times. While he was idling about, Alhaitham found a book detailing his activities and movements, which were uploaded to the Akasha on Non-Barba Day. Sino fails to see the reasoning behind it until Alhaitham tells him that the Akasha is capable of computation, thus it could predict his activities for the day. Sino is initially dismayed at this, but realizes if they were trying to avoid him, the perpetrators would go in the direction opposite to him, the desert. Heading out into the desert, they find some headsets buried in the sand and continue following them, surmising that they were left there recently. Sino then hears arguing, and they spot Dia and a group of Eremites led by Raman. Isak, believing Dia to have betrayed them, confronts her, causing the others to follow up, much to Dia's annoyance, as she was trying to convince Raman to aid them. Raman refuses to accept Dia's reasoning, so Alhaitham offers him himself as a hostage, although he still refuses to accept the deal. Dia asks Alhaitham if he'd uphold his promises, which he does. Dia then asks Rothman if he trusts her, which he does. She then offers her right arm as payment for her friend's words, which Rothman accepts and orders one of his men to chop her arm off. At the last moment, Rothman changes his mind, believing that cutting her arm off would be akin to cutting his own fingers, and sees no point in hurting his own kin. He allows the group to leave, but demands a fight the next day to settle the score, which she accepts. The next day, the group heads out to meet with Rothman's group. However, they only find one of the village keepers, who Rothman states was a one-on-one exchange, since he had reluctantly accepted the honesty of Dia's friends. This angers her, who immediately charges and easily overwhelms him. One of Rothman's men then threatens Isak's grandpa, but when his hands start shaking, another scolds him for cowardice. The man then looses his grip before realizing that it's an earthquake, but Isak's grandpa suddenly glows and protects the entire group with a barrier as the sands swallow them. When the group comes to, they find themselves in some mysterious ruins, which excites Rothman as the ruins belong to King Deshret. Rothman leaves his group to let them recover as he joins the others in investigating, where they find the Dendro Archon's power imbued in the ruins, which gets the group's attention due to the harmony between the Dendro Archon and King Deshret. After running into some runes, Alhaitham deciphers them, revealing to be the transcript to be from Kassala, the last priest of King Deshret. The transcript tells how King Deshret introduced forbidden knowledge to his people, causing them to go mad. To save them, Greater Lord Rukkhadevata used her own powers to give the people life. This was not without a cost, as King Deshret chose to sacrifice himself to prevent the knowledge from returning, while Rukkhadevata reverted to a small child. Rothman is shocked by the transcript before realizing that he and his people made an enemy of their savior and accepts the truth. He apologizes to the group for his actions and promises to return the village keepers and share what supplies his people have after explaining to them what he saw. Upon arriving at his stronghold, Rothman brings the group to the perpetrators, Morgi and Judar. Upon seeing both Alhaitham and Sino, they become terrified. The traveler asks them if the sages were planning to create a new god, which they confirm, much to the group's surprise. They explain that since Rukkhadevata's death, scientific breakthroughs had been rare and on the decline. After Il Dottore approached them with the notion to create a new god, they accepted and began to set the plan in motion, with the dream samsara and harvesting divine Kanj knowledge from the mad scholars being part of the process to create their new god. Returning to the village with the village keepers and the suspects, everyone agrees that what the sages are doing is completely unacceptable and begins to concoct a plan to crush the sages and rescue their true god. As the day starts, the traveler and Paimon find Candace, who tells them that everyone is waiting. She asks them to promise that they wouldn't get too reckless before entering the village chief's home, where they catch up with Alhaitham, Sino, and Dia. They formulate a plan before going off to finish some last-minute preparations. Alhaitham's plan involves taking action on the next Nangarba day. Candace could tell that the meeting went along well, and while she would remain behind to protect the village, she prays for their success. Catching up to Alhaitham, he had just finished speaking with Raman. Alhaitham reminds them that they need to commit to the plan due to the serious circumstances involved. He then states that as a scholar, he could advise the mercenaries from behind rather than having to fight at the front. He also points out that he had not known of forbidden knowledge while working at the academia, and suspects that the scholars and mercenaries who used it fell victim to its corruption. However, the academia treated it as something else, and he suspects that what is happening now happened in the past. Paimon tells him that Tainari had told them that Irminsul was connected to Sumeru's ailments, and that they should inform Nahida, although Alhaitham fails to see the reason why, until the traveler explains it to him. This makes him conclude that saving Lesser Lord Kusanali is much more important, but before they could start, he needed to finish his preparations, and they head off to Rothman's base. At Rothman's base, they find Morgi and Judar working, as Alhaitham had given them something to do. Paimon spots the headset from before, alongside some canned knowledge capsules, causing her to become nervous. Alhaitham explains that they wouldn't be using them just yet, but asks the traveler to remind herself of her conviction. As she wears the headset, Alhaitham asks her to simulate the successful rescue of Kusanali, and that Sumeru's political landscape has changed. Paimon is still unsure as to his intentions before he explains that people have relied too much on the Inkasha, and thus they're slaves to orders. With his preparation done, he sends them off to Sino at Caravan Ribat, while he finishes up some other small tasks with the Academia scholars. Making their way to Sino, the traveler finds him arguing with Rothman over the plan, as Sino could not accept a plan with immense casualties. Rothman states that they don't have a choice and that it's their best option, but Sino was still unconvinced, as he had gone to Alhaitham for advice. Rothman admits that he knows the ways of the desert before he explains the plan. Using his capacities as a Matra, Sino would work with the guards at the outpost to arrest Rothman's men, as they were unregistered, and that the outpost would never accept so many Eremites at once, being their best bet to infiltrate Sumeru City. Sino states that Alhaitham gave him that suggestion, and while he would ensure his men would not be hurt, the other guards wouldn't be as inconsiderate, and he is against meaningless loss. The traveler offers to help, which both accept. Sino, seeing Rothman's determination, decides to go with the plan. Heading to the outpost, Sino informs the guards that he's about to make a large arrest and needs their assistance in apprehending them. The guards go off to inform their superiors, and as they do so, Paimon is worried that they might have been feigning support. However, Sino reminds them of their discussion, in which Alhaitham believed the guards at Caravan Ribat should be unaware that Sino had stepped down due to his fellow Matra not knowing his current status, and that if something happened to him, it would attract unwanted attention and potentially expose their master plan. Alhaitham also reminds the group of Akasha's computation capabilities, although confident that it would be unable to discover their plan yet, as they were all working together. Paimon is relieved before Sino reminds her to pay attention next time as they hear footsteps. The guards return with their superior, Luxembarbo, who Sino briefs on his mission and introduces the traveler and Paimon as his assistant in their construction, respectively. Sino requests an elite platoon to set out in 2 days to apprehend Rothman's men. After 2 days pass, they meet up with Sino at the outskirts of the village, where they find Luxembarbo and his men there already. Sino reminds them that they need Rothman's men alive before they conveniently arrive on the scene. After a brief struggle, Rothman and his men are arrested and taken away. With no one to hear them, Sino promises to get Rothman and his men into Sumeru City before asking them to proceed with the next part of the plan, assisting Dia and convincing Tainari to support them. While Paimon is concerned that he would not help due to not being told the full plan, Sino is confident that his relationship with Tainari would get the message through. Returning to Caravan Ribat, Dia jokingly scolds them for being late. Due to the plan posed by Il Dottore, Dia states that they'll need information on him before proceeding with their plan. The current plan involves heading to Party Stai to find Tainari, whom Alhaitham and Sino still believe still has the Academia's trust, and thus use him to get as much information as possible to adjust their plan if needed. Arriving at Party Stai, they find Tainari and ask to speak with him privately. Learning that Sino is working with them, he agrees to help out in any way possible while not asking for the finer details. When they ask about the Torre, he tells them that the Harbinger had just left, having arrived to ask him to hand over Hypatia for reasons unknown outside of working on her treatment. Tainari refused, as he had sensed an aura similar to that of other scholars. Dottore admitted that he would have dealt with them, but with the Tsaritsa calling for his return, he had no time, but remarked that he could finish up some loose ends before leaving. Asking where he went, Tainari ports them in the direction he left. Dia uses her mercenary skills to track him and determines he's leaving via Port Ormos. There, they find a large Ventui entourage before they hide in Wakali Funduk. However, Dottore spots and waves at them, causing them to realize that he had misled them, and that they're going after Hypatia instead. Rushing back to Party Stai, they help Tainari drive the Fatui off before checking on Hypatia. However, touching her causes a manifestation of Scaramouche to appear, who tells them that their mission is futile, as neither they nor Nahida can defeat him. The traveler asks why he's contacted her directly, to which he replies that he's just in a good mood. She asks some questions, stating that the Academia only sees him as a new Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, and that the process to ascend him is risky. While Scaramouche notes her genuine concern, he states that he was always meant to be a god. He expresses his disgust for humanity, but when the traveler points out that he could have cut his connection to Hypatia, he admits that he does have some affection for her, and that he saw her worthy to be his first follower due to seeing his past. The traveler informs him of Dottore's intentions, but he believes it to be an attempt to sow discord and showcases his newfound power by causing lightning around Party Stai. Worried about Dia and Tainari, they head out and find that Tainari had been struck by lightning. Dia states that the weather changed and tore most of the Fatui. Tainari states that he'll be fine, but notices that the traveler looks concerned. Heading into the greenhouse, the traveler informs them of her encounter with Scaramouche. Dia takes this as their plan being successful, as Dottore had left. She tells her to meet up with the group at the Grand Bazaar at the appointed time. The next day, the traveler meets up with Alhaitham outside the Academia and asks for a rundown of the plan again. Alhaitham states that she'll be infiltrating Azar's office to access his console, as there should be a way to free Kusanali from the Sanctuary of Sur Istana. As Nangarbode is important for the Academia, Alhaitham states that they'll just head straight in through the front door, much to Paimon's astonishment. Once they enter, they're met by Varaf, who questions the traveler's arrival, only for Alhaitham to tell him that the reason should be obvious as he walks off. Further inside, they head into the House of Dana, where they lie low to ensure they wouldn't run into Azar in the process. However, Azar intercepts them, having been informed by an eyewitness. He takes them to their office, stating that due to Nangarbode, he has little time for small talk, and asks why they came before detaining them. The traveler warns them of the Fatui's motives, but he pays no attention to it, being interested only in their new god. Alhaitham gives him information on the traveler, leading the two to believe he had betrayed them. However, Azar calls Alhaitham out on his own plan. In an apparent fit of insane rage, Alhaitham drops the Divine Knowledge Capsule and lunges at Azar, but misses, although he knocks over a rack of knowledge capsules on Azar's desk before the guards apprehend him. Azar orders him to be exiled to Aru village before locking the Traveler and Paimon up. Confident that with the Traveler out of the way, the sage's plan would be set for good. As Alhaitham is dragged away, his Akasha reverts to green, revealing that his insanity was just a ploy. He shares a glance with Nilou as they pass by her. In the confinement room, the Traveler and Paimon go over the plan again, as Alhaitham's betrayal has set the Traveler in the best position available to wake Nahida from the Akasha. She manages to find a spot with a stable connection and connects to Nahida's consciousness. She initially has trouble connecting to Nahida, as she has self-doubt over her capabilities as an Archon, but after hearing an unknown voice, she is convinced to do her best. The Traveler breaks a barrier surrounding her and manages to wake her up. With Nahida's consciousness awoken, the next part of the plan begins. Outside, Sheikh Zubair asks Nilou if she really intends to go with this plan, which she affirms. Zubair concedes, but warns her to be careful, as the few people of the bazaar might be unable to help her. Nilou makes her way to the academia, where she performs at the entrance. Azar orders the guards to detain her, but when the order is uploaded to the guards, they're instead told that Kusanali escaped into the city and are ordered to apprehend her. Alhaitham had planned for this possibility, thus leaving the academia without guards, allowing Dihya and the Aramites to go into action. Dressing Isak as Kusanali, they lure the guards into the bazaar and defeat them. Back at the academia, Azar wonders where the guards are when Uday arrives, having done what he was told. Azar checks the Akasha himself, discovering the order, but wonders how it got there in the first place. When Uday questions the Akasha, he unintentionally angers Azar, who goes to the sanctuary of Suristhana to investigate. When he arrives to confirm the information himself, he runs into Sino, who demands that he plead guilty to the Archon herself. Meanwhile, Dihya frees the Traveler from the confinement room and tells her that the plan was a success. Heading into the sanctuary, the Traveler and Paimon meet Nahida in person for the first time. Nahida apologizes for putting them through situations she caused, but they decline the apology as she wasn't at fault. Not knowing the full extent of the damage, Nahida reversed the Akasha to be used by herself only, and revokes all of the sages' access, making them pay for their crimes, and also to stop the false god. She advises the Traveler to prepare herself. Inside, Nahida remarks on the intricacy of the Akasha before giving the Traveler an upgraded version, which she made just recently and would help her in her travels. She also reveals that she discovered the false god's location. She also intends to support her, as she doesn't have enough power to fight yet. Needing to connect to Scaramouche's consciousness, they enter the facility, which was made by the Fatui. As they head deeper into the facility, Nahida could sense that Scaramouche was either nearing or already had become a god. When they finally reach him, they find him in a large mechanical suit, and he sees himself as a god, although Nahida notes that the sages weren't able to infuse the divine knowledge capsules into him, and that he lacks the spiritual height of one. Nahida awakens him to get his attention before he challenges them to a fight to reenact a scene of the Archon War, despite Nahida's pleas otherwise. Despite the Traveler's initial attempts, Scaramouche plunges his arm into Nahida's chest to grab her gnosis, but Nahida reveals that he had been in a repeating samsara. Due to the samsaras, she proceeds to impart the combat knowledge to the traveler to put her on better fighting terms, alongside compiling the knowledge of Sumeru's people with the Akasha to the upgraded terminal, allowing her to defeat Scaramouche. Nahida proceeds to grab the electro-gnosis from the mechanical chest, causing Scaramouche to fall out as he begs Nahida not to take it from him. Using the electro-gnosis alongside her own, Nahida and the traveler enter Rukkhadevata's final memory, although she is surprised to see it severely contaminated. The traveler explains the concept of forbidden knowledge to her, which she connects to King Deshret's time and also the Cataclysm. Nahida clutches in pain as the corroded consciousness is affecting everyone, so sets out and finds a boat to take them to Rukkhadevata's lucid consciousness to find the answers they seek. When they arrive, the traveler recalls seeing the same place when she first arrived in Sumeru, before she meets a replica of Nahida, although it is Rukkhadevata's consciousness. Nahida has many questions for Rukkhadevata, who reveals that she created Nahida from the purest Irminsul branch to serve as her incarnation in the next samsara. Rukkhadevata states that to save Irminsul, Nahida would have to erase her from it, which would remove all traces of her having ever existed on Teyvat. Nahida is upset at this, but regretfully complies. As Rukkhadevata is removed, Irminsul is restored, which in turn allows the people of Sumeru to dream again and removes the forbidden knowledge completely. Returning to the real world, Nahida and Paimon have forgotten about Rukkhadevata, but as an alien being, the traveler is not. As the traveler contemplates telling Nahida the truth, she suddenly falls asleep. Dottore then walks in, having waited too long to speak with Nahida in person, and he simply used a sound wave to put the traveler and Paimon to sleep, having correctly surmised that it would not affect the Archon. He reveals he came to negotiate, but also reminds her that she can't fight him. Nahida admits this, but threatens to destroy the electro-gnosis, which in turn could potentially awaken Celestia. Dottore falls for the threat, but Nahida, knowing that A's gnosis would bring disaster to Sumeru, agrees to give it to him as long as he destroys his other segments. Dottore states that he had spent many rare resources making them, but agrees and eliminates them all. With the deal made, Dottore inquires about her dendrognosis, reasoning that it has no use now that the Akasha is going to be shut down. Dottore offers her information about the skies of Teyvat being fake in exchange for her own gnosis. The traveler regains consciousness at Gandharvaville, with Paimon waking her up. Catching up with Kale, the three have breakfast before finding that Nilou had left them a letter. Opening it, they discover that she's invited them to a celebratory feast, as Cyno had returned to his original position as General Mahamatra. As they meet up with Tighnari, the traveler learns that Cyno had brought them to Gandharvaville to recover, although he was unaware that a feast was being held in his name. The traveler invites the two along, but they decline, as the forest rangers have been much busier as of late. Tighnari also reveals that Azar and the other sages were sentenced by Nahida to spend the rest of their lives in a Vidya forest to cultivate knowledge after hearing that Nahida had defeated Scaramouche and restored Irminsul. Returning to the Grand Bazaar, Nilou tells the traveler that she had also sent invitations to Alhaitham, Dia, Dunyarzad, Rothman, and Cyno, and asked them to look for them to confirm that they got the invitations. Heading into the house of Dana, they find Alhaitham arguing with Kaveh, who had just returned from the desert to discover that the sages had been overthrown. As Kaveh leaves to confirm it with others, Alhaitham notices the traveler. He remarks on the absurdity of the situation they had just navigated, and that he rejected an offer to become the Grand Sage, as he did not like being a leader. The traveler informs him of the feast, and he agrees to come. Heading to Port Ormos, they find Dia and Dunyarzad, the latter relieved and delighted that all the Eleazar cases were dealt with. Dia states that she intends to quit serving as her bodyguard, as she always intended to do if Dunyarzad was cured, wanting to return to her mercenary life. She asked her if Alhaitham told her about considering working for the Academia, which she was unaware of. Paimon asked about the invitation, although the two had not been aware of it, but thank her and agree to show up. Asking where Sino and Rothman went, Dia tells them that they were likely at Aru Village. Arriving at Aru Village, the pair catch up with Sino just as Rothman and Sitaria arrive. Sitaria reveals that she intends to leave the Academia, but continue her studies so she can enrich the well-being of her people, who had been neglected by the Academia. Due to Nahida's manipulation earlier, Sitaria resolved to return to the desert and was going to confront Azar when she found that he wasn't there, only for Sino to inform her that he was gone. Nahida, wanting to put the people of the desert on par with the forest, devoted many supplies to help out, but Sino had to contact Rothman's men to get them distributed. Sino then learns about the feast in his name and agrees to come, while Rothman and Sitaria decline, as they're too busy. With all the guests confirmed, the traveler returns to the Grand Bazaar 2 days later in the evening as the feast goes underway. Noting that everyone had forgotten about Rukkhadevata and now believed Nahida to have been the Dendro Archon all along, the traveler decides to keep her memory a secret to honor Rukkhadevata's last wish. After talking to a few people, Nahida connects to the traveler and uses her as a channel to speak to the rest of the group, thanking them for saving her and all of Sumeru. The group is humbled by her presence before she arrives in person, bringing the feast to its climax. The following day, the traveler returns to the sanctuary to speak with Nahida, who answers her questions about her next stop, Fontaine and its Archon, Focalors. Nahida also reveals that her sibling, despite not originating from Tevat, was recorded in Irmizol as suddenly appearing in Conria. According to the information in Irmizol, either began traveling around Tevat after the Cataclysm. However, the records surrounding the climax of his journey are fuzzy, leading Nahida to suspect that someone was intentionally withholding information about his fate. Nahida also reveals that the Fatui had classified him as Tevat's fourth descender, a visitor from outside Tevat. She suspects the first descender to be the Heavenly Principles, but is unsure as to who the other two were, leaving both with many questions. Nonetheless, she promises to help her with her inquiries, hinting that she may appear in her dreams. Wandering around Port Ormos after sunset, the traveler and Paimon run into Mazrou, who hands them a letter from a crafty fellow who used a loophole to guarantee that his letter was delivered to them. They read it and find that the letter was from Kaya, who was stopping at Sumeru, and asked to meet up with them at Jafar Tavern in the afternoon. When they arrive, they find that Kaya has had his fill of all the drinks. Paimon wonders as to what he might be doing in Sumeru, believing that as a captain of the Knights of Avonius, he should be back in Mondstadt and that Jean would be upset. Kaya states that he had come to scout out Sumeru's alcohol industry, as the tavern itself was home to a special concoction made with spices. After Traveler points out that he's alone, Kaya admits that he had been to Sumeru before, but it brings up bad memories. The Traveler tells him that he doesn't have to go into detail, so Kaya tells them that in his youth, he had heard Krepus discussing sending merchants to Sumeru. Knowing that Conria was situated under Sumeru and yearning to learn more about his roots, Kaya stowed it away amid the merchant's cargo, only to be brought back to Mondstadt by the ear when he was caught. They ask him how much he knows about the nation, and he admits that he only knows a little about from reading books. And as he spent less time in Conria, he began to care less about it, and wondered if his father wanted him to live happily in Mondstadt. As Kaya remarks that his last name, Alberic, is the last thing tying him to Conria, Dainsleif inexplicably appears and asks him what he knew about the name. The traveler and Paimon are surprised by Dainsleif's appearance, while Kaya greets him, having sensed him listening in on their conversation. Dainsleif then states that Kaya's ancestors, the Alberics, are the founders of the Abyss Order, leaving everyone surprised. Kaya expresses surprise at the revelation before recognizing Dainsleif as a pure-blooded inhabitant with his primogen-shaped eyes. Paimon wonders if Kaya was working for the Abyss Order, but he does not answer that, saying the conversation steered into too serious a topic. Kaya then takes his leave, since he has a spice merchant to talk business with. As Kaya leaves, Paimon remarks that the relationship between Kaya and Dainsleif appears to be tense, comparing it to oil and water. Dainsleif tells her that he doesn't know him well, and wonders if Kaya is being honest about his relationship to the Abyss Order. The traveler inquires as to the founding of the Order before Paimon asks what he's doing in Sumeru. Dainsleif states that while recovering, he remembered something to the Loom of Fate operation, which the traveler's brother had mentioned when he was traveling with him in Sumeru, and thus is trying to find the place they had gone to together in a Vidya forest. Paimon decides to go, but Dainsleif waits for his drink before they do so. Arriving at a small farming field, Dainsleif finds the area familiar, and they investigate. Paimon worries about rudely intruding, but Dainsleif senses that no one had been around for years. With few leads in the field, they check the hunt, and find no leads inside either. Dainsleif then hears something outside, where they discover a group of slimes. After eliminating them, Dainsleif decides to investigate the nearby ley lines alone, concerned that something had attracted the monsters. Paimon is worried, but Dainsleif states that the hunt is the main investigation, and thus the Paimon and traveler set up a campfire for the night. Paimon asks about the traveler's sibling, and the traveler responds that she had frequently looked together at the stars, pointing out planets they wanted to visit, and shares that their stop at Teyvat marked the first time they had been separated. Paimon volunteers to take watch, so the traveler falls asleep and dreams of her twin brother. The following morning, the traveler wakes up to find Dainsleif greeting them. Reminding them of their task, he then notices that she must have been dreaming of her brother due to her tears and lets her be. When the traveler fully wakes up, she hears a noise coming from the house and investigates, only to find an intimidating man scolding her for intruding into his business. She inquires about Paimon, who tells her that she left for the forest too. When the man tells her to leave, the traveler refuses, believing he's hiding something and that they have no chance of finding Paimon in the forest. The man admits that he was worried about her being related to the forest rangers or academia and allows her to do as they please. When he decides to go inside, the traveler insists on following, where she finds him with a traveler with a bandaged wound. The man explains that he was too young to suffer such a fate before the traveler realizes the man is from Conria. He demands an explanation, and the traveler explains that she knew based on his features. He then asks her if she believes in a god, which she doesn't. The man then introduces himself as Aid. He explains that there are few humans who follow no gods, and considers those who do to be his enemies. As he rants about their gods and the gift that ruined Conria, the traveler asks why some were turned into hilly churls and others were not. Aid explains that while only one bloodline found in Conria, they welcomed all humans who did not follow the gods. Those considered pure-blooded Conrians were deemed the greater sinners and given the curse of immortality, while the others were given the curse of the wilderness and transformed into hilly churls. The traveler asks about the hilly churl, and the man introduces him as Kari Bear, his illegitimate son that he had with a woman from Mondstadt while he was unsatisfied with his life as a noble. The traveler asks him about Kari Bear's mother, but the man does not disclose anything as he finds it too painful before he remembers what he was doing and goes out. The traveler catches up with him and finds him at a crafting bench, where he reveals that he was creating a potion with materials only found in Sumeru to make a temporary cure. Aid asks for some Sumeru roses and Kaalbalada lotus, with the traveler insisting in making the medicine. However, it has one more step, to get the blessing of one of the 7, which Aid finds hard to do, but eventually goes with it. With the medicine fully prepared, they administer it to Kari Bear, but it has no effect, leaving Aid angered. The traveler believes that it wasn't enough, so they decide to make more. Aid has her fetch some water to grow the strange mushrooms used in the remedy. He then states that he has to leave and asks the traveler not to let the forest rangers discover the place as he makes the fertilizer. Instead, fungi appear, which the traveler repels. As they prepare another dose of the medicine at the Statue of the 7, Aid notices Kari Bear leaving, and they chase after him. Following the hilly churl, Aid realizes that it is not Kari Bear, as it lacks the scarf he gave him as a gift. Nonetheless, the hilly churl's behavior was unusual, and the two decided to follow it to an unknown sanctuary, discovering hilly churls praying to something. Investigating further, the two are greeted by a strange being. The traveler recognizes it as a being of the Abyss, but it is not a member of the Abyss Order. The traveler defeats it, after which Aid expresses awe at the being's power and how the traveler easily defeated it. When they reach the end, they find a strange object hanging mid-air and realize that it is the same as the defiled statue they encountered before. The traveler warns Aid to leave, but turns to see Aid suddenly bowing as a mysterious voice that calls itself a sinner begins to speak. As the voice leaves, Aid regains consciousness, awed by the experience. Disturbed, the traveler insists that they leave, and they return to his house. After receiving a second dose of the medicine, Kari Bear regains consciousness, but is somewhat horrified at what he has become. Aid tells him that they're in a fairy tale and under no circumstances is he to take off his mask. Believing that the voice from the strange sanctuary saved his son, Aid returns to it to pray, not believing the traveler's claims that the god was actually a sinner. Worried for his safety, the traveler returns to the sanctuary to help clear any monsters on the way. When they return to the spot where they heard the voice, the statue is nowhere to be seen, and neither are any hilly churls. Aid decides to return to his house, believing they would meet the strange deity again. When they arrive, they discover Kari Bear missing and the mirror broken on the floor. Worried that he took off his mask and saw himself in the mirror, the two frantically try to track him, running into some forest rangers on the way. After being sent in the right direction, they find Kari Bear imbued with the power of the Abyss as he takes his mask off, rendering the traveler unconscious. Once she regains consciousness, Aid reveals himself as Clothar Alberic and addresses the traveler as his prince, causing the traveler to pick up the mirror and see herself as her brother before falling unconscious again as Clothar declares his intention to use the power of the Abyss to fight the gods. When she comes to, she finds Dane's lip and Paimon over her. Dainsleif states that the Abyss had messed with the ley lines in the area, and he fixed it up before the traveler explains what she saw to the two. Upon digging the field, they find the remains of a man, which they believe is Clothar, as he had disappeared 100 years after founding the Abyss Order, and a woman. Dainsleif states that they have to part ways for now, as he may have been the traveler, referring to the sinner they had seen in the vision. He has his suspicions as to who this sinner is, but needs time to confirm their identity, and he'll know for sure in their next meeting as he leaves. The traveler then hugs Paimon.